Thank you all for attending Operations Improvements Committee meeting on the 31st of October. Obviously the weather's just decided to hammer it down in time for Halloween, so that's disappointing, kids. So number one on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence.
So I have apologies from Councillor Minshaw and Councillor White.
Thank you. Item number 2 is to note declarations of members' interests, if there is any. Item number 3 is to confirm and sign the minutes of Operations and Improvements Committee held on the 1st of August, which should be in the back. We have a proposer for the minutes. Councillor Walton, second Councillor Coyley. Thank you. All those in favour? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Yes.
Item number 4 is public participation, which gathering there isn't any. If we don't have any questions put forward, thank you.
See any questions?
Oh, okay. Item number 5 is to note the year-to-date financial position for the Operations and Improvements Committee, which was sent out with the clerk. Is there anything we need to be aware of on it?
I don't think there's anything in particular. Some of the invoices that we tend to receive have been coming in, so you'll notice some payments have been made on items such as floor schemes and partial payments towards ranges, etc. I don't think there's anything else to note unless there's any questions.
No. Item number 6 is to receive an update and consider matters relating to the Rangers.
Thank you, Chair. At the last meeting of this committee, a few things to take forward. We recommend to Council that the Rangers Commission on a 3-year contract with various provisions for opportunity to revisit it, as well as seeking consideration of the scale of surface and whether it's delivering the level you want to deliver or a different level is sought. So, as directed, we've drafted a report for you that covers a few different things. It covers the current work in very brief terms of the Ranger Service. The Ranger Service being a service of this council, delivered by 4 operatives, one in a supervisory capacity out of 2 bands, and the commission service through ANSA, but we entirely direct it. The current service is mainly responsive, but proactive at times in terms of planting and repair that's identified as they go around the town and spot it. It's covered very positively in social media, and also it's informed through residents who see an opportunity to get the Rangers involved in tasks. There's an infographic that's shared publicly associated with jobs in the first half of the year tackled, and it gives an indication of the types of things they're doing, as well as the areas they're working in. Obviously, the vast majority of work is done in Crewe Central, where the most traffic is, and human traffic, and also Crewe East, which is one of the largest wards in and of itself. In terms of an operational scale review, we saw that this was done, and there's a table of considerations. I've tried to come up with as many thoughts as I could. And I think if members of mine might want to consider if any of those make any sense. The first option, as always, is no change. Is the service at the level that's appropriate, or at the level you feel it needs to be, and that's a no change option. Other options include an alleyways team, so something dedicated for specific tasks facing issues. Might include clearing alleyways, working in the community to maintain those alleyways, but as well as maybe tackling some of the ongoing issues of street waste we see in partnership with the Cleaner Crew pilot project as well, not to undermine or disseminate anything different. There could be a green spaces team focusing on improving green spaces. There could just be an additional van and team, so it just increases the capacity by another van and team. Excuse me. Or there could be, for example, a parks team going around the parks, litter picking, emptying bins more regularly than is already done. These are examples, potentials. There's a do nothing, just carry on what we're doing. It's absolutely fine and proper. Increase the capacity by the same again. In a town size of Crewe, it could be argued that's not disproportionate, but it would impact on spend. Or tackle specific areas of interest to members that are listed there, or ones that I haven't thought of as well. They're always open to. Another area of consideration we were directed to look at was the consideration of direct service provision. And there are some detailed finances associated with this and some calculations which I can share, but I haven't put it in the report because they would take some explaining. But there is the highlights there of what that would look like in terms of cost and the differential between direct provision and through ANSWER. So at a point at which the service were to grow, it might be argued that direct provision would be more sustainable financially should you be minded to go down the route any time in the future. In the end, we come to some conclusions, or I did anyway. And those include the current work that the measurement of range of task delivery, should that continue and develop to provide scrutable information to inform output and development. In terms of operational scale review, there are opportunities for further service delivery in the town and the scale of Crewe to assist with public realm shared space maintenance. It should be considered if any increases in service capacity can be funded as a priority, and if so, to ensure that appropriate budgeting is in place. That there may be a value in targeting any additional capacity at specific areas of work, such as focusing on alleys or green spaces or parks. The additional capacity could be in the form of additional general public realm maintenance team. The consideration of direct service provision conclusions are that it's not a requirement to increase capacity and should be considered in light of the council's corporate strategy as well as the response to key opportunities and challenges. The direct employment of the ranger service becomes financially viable at a scale of 6 rangers working for 3 vans. The direct management would only be deliverable with the provision of works facility or workshop, which require capital investment. And the direct employment is not currently an option due to the current available assets, but the opportunities to access and acquire such assets continue to be explored as directed. So really looking for the consideration to discuss and take forward, does the committee require the operational data relating to ranges in any particular format or with any other additional data? Then is shown in the infographic. Does the committee seek any change in the capacity provision of the town ranger service to then be carried forward for budget planning and consultation consideration? Does the committee, should additional capacity be considered appropriate, seek to identify a targeted approach to delivery and in what form? And if additional capacity is progressed, does the committee seek direct employment of the service and associated savings as well as associated liabilities?
Sorry, I've turned it off. Turn it off. I'm sorry about that. I thought you had turned it off.
I'll let you off.
Thank you. Given the latest Alex and Villa schools,
No comment.
that won't matter.
Thank you for that. One question in regards to the report on that. 342 jobs logged. Is there any that weren't completed? And if so, how many?
There are always jobs that aren't
Jobs
completely
outstanding.
There are no jobs that are long-term outstanding, they're all tackled. There are occasional tasks that come forward that are bounced onto the appropriate aspect of another authority if they're beyond us, so highways things in particular, we can't amend the highway. But realistically, of all the jobs, they sort of take a bit longer than the time span of that snapshots, but no, there are no risks to jobs not getting completed. The Rangers are doing a great job of getting on the jobs quickly and also getting them out of the way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Payne?
Yeah, with regards to Rangers going forward, obviously I'd like to see them spending more time in the alleyways, and that's not knocking what they're doing already, just if there is an extra resource there. Because obviously I've seen what they do in the alleyways and people do appreciate it. And obviously a lot of people do say, what do we get from the Crewe Town Council, what do we actually do? And I think when people actually see what the Rangers do, that is one physical thing that they see the Town Council doing. So just last Thursday, for example, how quick they managed to sort out a tree that has been a problem in an alleyway for ages because it's on a bit of private land. But they made light work of it, and the people around, they all witnessed it was the Town Council Rangers doing that. And just other jobs that they do in the alleyways, things that go unnoticed because they're doing it sort of like under the radar, because it's not officially Town Council or Cheshire East work, but it's something it needs doing. So if there is that resource there, obviously I'd like to see it being used in alleyways in any way, shape or form.
Councillor Coyle?
Can I just expand on that a bit as well and ask you a question? Under your conclusions and considerations, you actually separate the three items like alleyways, parks and green space. Is there a reason why that should be separated, or just workload?
Well,
Based on the workload.
yeah, there is, the Rangers are, I would say, at capacity. You've got a town of 80,000 people, give or take, depending on which way you look at it. And to ask for operatives in 2 vans to keep a town that big, you know, as clean as everyone is aimed to be. The members, the Crewe Town Council takes a proactive and positive approach to try and improve the public road maintenance. That's why you have your Rangers. So they have jobs coming in all the time. They are logged, scheduled and put out, and then they get to those jobs. They don't have a huge amount of downtime. So if you were to refocus to what you've got, that's absolutely fine. But the jobs that we get in at this time of year, they'll be sweeping all the leaves up and doing a bit of graffiti, litter picking, all that sort of thing. Those jobs will go undone because there isn't additional capacity in there. Those are just suggested ones from the top of my head. I am not saying they're the only option. If you have better options, obviously members are totally free to progress those and consider them as you see fit. But those are areas of work where the Rangers have added value in the past, but on an ad hoc basis. So just like Councillor Payne said, at times they can find opportunities to go to an alleyway and really support the community in doing that. But that's on the spot activity that then disappears straight away. Equally, they have in the past and will continue to gone into parks where there's been a particular mess and helped to clear that up and address it. And equally, they've enhanced the aspects of hedge cutting and grounds maintenance that are in the shared green spaces in the town, which are maintained by ANSA, but equally there are bits that we might aim a little bit at higher standards if there's more capacity, which the Rangers do. But there wouldn't be the capacity to schedule in that work on a regular weekly basis because it's responsive to all the jobs they already have to do. And then there would be, if the question came up from the chair, are there any jobs not getting done? Well, there would be then, because the capacity is the capacity. There's only 2 vans and 4 workers. So if members are happy with the level of service, then there's no further need for review. It'll carry on doing what it's doing. It'll respond to opportunities when it can, and that's fine. If members want to enhance that any further, then that's what this is all about. Is there any mind to move it on to focus on another area or to focus on greater delivery?
Councillor Cosburn?
Thank you. I think we should be looking to expand the service for the 24-25 financial year. With the plan to range, but actually asking them to particularly prioritise the alleyways and the parks, as opposed to being the sort of do a job actually focusing on those areas in particular. There's a significant programme of investment going into the parks, not just we're putting in, but also to the town's funds. and residents want to see them sort of well looked after, not damaged at this stage, which would be responsive. There's no point for a lot of money just in the ongoing maintenance isn't there. The only concern I have is around the alleyways is that we're constantly getting communications saying that we're providing a free tidy up service for people that are illegally flag tipping. People don't want to see us sort of cleaning up. This is not just the town council, but Cheshire East as well. People don't want to see us just tidying up. People want to see it stopped in the first place and more prevention as opposed to sort of reacting to it. And people that are doing it being fined. So I'm just a little bit concerned that, well, if we're talking about alleyway clear-ups, well, actually all we're doing is removing it, and that's not, people do want it removed, obviously, but they want it stopped in the first place, so that there needs to be kind of another look at the enforcement side of that as well. In terms of the direct employment issue, I think we should be looking to direct employment if it makes financial sense, but also I don't know how that would then affect things like access for work. So if it's effectively us working on Cheshire East land, would that be affected at all? And would we still have like guarantees around the service provision answer as a result if we've kind of taken away the hard money?
Well, to answer that last one, ANSA has a contract with Cheshire East and has to forward its contract with Cheshire East. The terms of that contract have never been shared with me, and so I can't challenge any aspect of that, but that's the principle of their engagement with Cheshire East. In terms of operation, we work under the governance that we have, which includes statute associated with works in the public realm and the powers to do that, as well as the powers within the Localism Act 2011, sections 1 to 8. So we have certain powers on the public spaces we can do. There are elements where we would maybe challenge Cheshire East to fulfil a certain higher standard at times rather than subsidise that. But the principle of the service is an augmentation to any maintenance contract, not a subsidy of.
My only concern was if we have a direct employment offer, then actually if we're talking about doing these parts of things, we say, oh, actually this part needs a look at paid, we're going to have to ask permission for every single job on Cheshire East, that's it.
Well, technically yes, but we absolutely can't. Honest with you, my belief is we ask for forgiveness before permission because it's a lot quicker. And so if a job needs doing, and it's obviously a job that is of benefit to the community and the maintenance of the town, it's I believe it's acceptable to deliver that improvement in a professional and safe and appropriate way to everyone's benefit, including the asset owner who seems not to have the opportunity to do that work.
Councillor Byrne?
I just wanted to follow on from Councillor Cosby's points about just clearing fly tip waste doesn't help the problem. I think having a clean alleyway that's maintained is more effective than keeping it clean than issuing a fine. Now, I don't know if that's because Cheshire East don't publicise the fact that they issue fines, so which would deter people, I think. But of all the alleyways I've worked in, all the ones I've been in, once it's been cleaned and there's no abandoned bins, 9 times out of 10 there's no more fly tipping. So if the Rangers were to clean alleyways, that would be more effective, I think, than issuing fines.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it should. I think there's a balance between the two approaches. What I mean is that if we're going to be having lots of publicity around we've cleaned this alleyway, but then there is future issues, council taxpayers are not going to be very happy that their council tax is going up to clean up something that is illegal and should be happening in the first place. If that makes sense. Going back to sort of your prevention things, and when we had the street scene officers, were they called?
Yeah. Yes, I
going back to that, yeah, that sort of thing. And obviously, I know that we employ or we fund an enforcement officer. I think there needs to be much more shouting about the enforcement action than what we're currently doing, because there are still the same hotspots. We've had CCTV investment, we've had enforcement officers, we've had rangers, and yet if you look at Lord Street, for example, I know that's not an alleyway per se, but there are still flagging hotspots where every single week you can guarantee there's something being dumped, and we've still not got a tackle, we've still got a hold, sorry, on those particular sites, and they're the ones that hit Facebook every week, and people
Yeah.
will most often contact us about.
All I'd say about Lord Street, just to back up what I was saying before, if you look at Lord Street any day of the week, there's 10, 15 bins there, and that backs up what I was saying about once it's clean and there's no bins, it discourages it. People don't think, oh, I'll dump that there, it'll be all right. It just.
Yeah, this is just to reassure you, very early discussions, so there's no, you know, as Councillor Scott pointed out, we're talking about not the coming financial year's budget, but budget after that to make sure that plan for. And it was also stated that any, if it were to be alleyways, for example, then that would be done in partnership with the Clean Crew project to make sure that the enforcement action is in place alongside it, not that any works that are done by our own service would trip that up in any way. And I would support Councillor Payne's view that there's a thing I'm sure you all heard of called the broken window syndrome. So if you've got one broken window, you're going to get 2 and you can get 10. If you take quick action to repair and improve, then you tend to, researchers demonstrate that I'm aware of, reduce the replication of negative behaviour, because no one likes to throw the first wrapper on the floor, but they will throw the second and the third. So that intent is aimed at supporting the communities to back onto those and to keep those spaces tidy and clean whilst also getting them in that state already. To enhance any delivery of a Clean and Crew project and its enforcement approach, and also tackle areas that haven't been tackled. There are areas around the town that aren't necessarily fighting areas, but unkempt and unused spaces of alleyways that could be improved and still add those active travel areas, active community areas, and make it a more positive space overall in other areas of town that all have to be on the ladder streets. So we're a long way off defining out that work role. It's more as I actually come to you with suggestions and options and seeing if the committee's minding them. Councillor Crosby said, yeah, that seems like a positive idea to be planned out for. So if that's the way you want to go, then we'll do more work on it.
Councillor Coyle.
Yeah, just quickly, I think on the CCTV bit, that could probably really raise further on the agenda when we discuss CCTV. Because I think Councillor Rose at full council actually made a statement about trying to get mobile CCTV placed in certain strategic areas where it's sort of flagged.
Yeah, we have got some hotspots identified for cameras to be deployed.
Have we, yeah?
Yes.
Councillor, yeah, do you want to follow up on that one?
No.
Yeah, Councillor Clark.
My question is more around the financial implications on the council's preset. This is £108,000 we'll be adding to preset. We've already been mentioned that council about the finance committee are looking at very stringent no increases in budgets, and also the second part was it's part of the Crew alleyways funding. Well, are we guaranteed that we're going to get that in 24-25 as well? We seem to be considering things of a financial nature and not really knowing whether or not we're actually going to be able to be in a position to actually moving this forward, and we don't even know whether we can actually say that we can spend this money.
Councillor Cosman.
I think the key thing is that we show what our intent is at this stage. We're talking about financial decisions. We won't need to make this decision formally for another 12 months. So if we can plan. The other thing I was just going to say is about drawing in what external funding we can. I don't know what pockets there are. I know that the things that we might draw on, things like the FCC community fund that we get from the landfill sites, that's going to be drawn on for the parks, hopefully. So actually, there's already some limits being placed on us, but rather than just raising precepts and council tax, what can we do to actually find national and regional funds and bring them in to tackle these sorts of hotspots?
There'll be one-off funding pots, won't there? We won't be sort of, ongoing within. So, we might be bringing something in for 12 months and then actually can't fund it again. So the project gets finished, so.
On the external funding, I've already started exploring that. FCC funds won't cover it, but other funds might, and they may well be larger funds that will span a few years. So you have what would be termed a transitional model, where there'll be money externally at the start of a larger portion that then starts to taper down, and you may then consider whether precept tapers to meet it or the savings taper to meet it. Well, that's early exploration. I haven't put a lot of time, so I actually didn't know which direction you go.
Does anyone wish to add anything further regarding directions we take this forward with? Councillor Cosmo?
I can make a proposal. What I'd like to see is that we continue discussions around enhancing and expanding the Ranger service for financial year 24-25, particularly with an eye on the alleyways and parks projects.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. All those in favour of that proposal? Against? Abstention? One abstention, thank you, Councillor Clark. Item number 7 is to consider matters relating to the allotments.
Well, Chair. I won't revisit too much issues. We are working to try and regularise the allotment situation. I enjoyed, and I mean that, with those are having that, a positive meeting with representative allotment sites that we call the town sites, the 8 sites that are not federated. They did try and federate a couple of times. That didn't quite pan out so well. That's not down to anyone's fault. That's positive intent, not quite getting there because everyone's very busy. And we discussed a number of areas of how we move forward to make it a position whereby leases are direct with the council rather than through a federation. And those that were able to attend, everyone was invited, those that represent very positively engaged, very helpful, I would say, as well. Put a lot of time and thought into what they were saying. And there was full consensus in approach, which has been mentioned and shared with them, that the way forward is to have a standard national allotment holders lease model for each site, and then they will be able to be self-managed as they have been for a while, but actually in a regularized legal setting, which is all very, very positive. There is unfortunately a significant amount of admin behind that, because we should hold a lot of data on these sites, and also site surveys, and there will be some site maintenance as has been previously reported. But realistically, I would say we're progressing extremely positively and extremely cooperatively, and I am very grateful to those volunteers of all the allotment sites for taking part in that.
Were they happy with the proposal for the 10-year lease?
They challenged it very positively, and they expressed the position. The position on the 10-year lease is that it's minuted and clear that Crewe Town Council supports and values allotments in the town and intends on retaining them for any sort of future that we can consider. There is no intent to have those as community building sites, because effectively that's what allotment sites are. They build their own communities. So that's a great positive. The reason of 10-year allotments, there are many, but effectively commercial tenancies leases are challenged regularly in case law, and therefore leases become outdated. By having them able to be refreshed appropriately and positively regularly means they're more sustainable. Equally, at 10 years long, that is long before each site will be able to apply for significant funding should they seek it, because the funders would identify the longer terms on the leases. They can be renewed at a time should they be required to renew for any purpose of that site, and they'll be consistent across all the sites, so it's even and it's fair. And they checked and I expressed all that to them, and they understood. I've been very clear since they engaged with them that my advice to council would always be 10-year leases on the basis of their sustainability and ability to flex to the changes in case law.
Okay, thank you. So I'm happy to propose that we've noted the ongoing work and to continue the engagement with the volunteers. And
Yeah, just ongoing work, just to note it, just to update this committee, which is responsible for the allotments, just let me know. Happy to answer any questions if you've got them.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Do the Rangers do any work with the allotments?
Right, the Rangers, as I've expressed, are at capacity, so it's not realistic to have them on the sites clearing those sites off because
No,
too many
that
sites.
wasn't
No,
my
I know,
question.
but I understand that. I'm just trying to cover off a lot of potential questions.
Yeah,
The Rangers are really positive and want to
Yeah.
help out.
Yeah.
So they have helped out sites that have had issues with excess waste on them, where the volunteers have brought the waste to
yeah,
gate and then
Yeah.
it's been helped to remove, because that's volunteers, that's communities helping themselves.
yeah.
There are issues on the boundaries, each site's supposed to maintain its own boundary, but on the
That was gonna be
external,
my question.
the external part of that boundary, the Rangers have helped maintain that at times where it's most appropriate. So for example, on Ruskin Road, the alleyways by that site, those hedges have been maintained recently by the Rangers.
Yeah.
Because they overhung the alleyways.
Yeah.
On the external
Well,
perimeter.
that was just going to be the
So-
question, because I know a lot of the sites, they spend a lot of money getting private contractors in keeping the hedges maintained, and I thought it might have been.
There's a reason it costs a lot of money, because it takes a lot of time. So if you wanted to have the range, if it was wanted, the Rangers were to maintain all the external boundaries of the sites, they would spend a significant portion of the spring and then the early autumn trimming back hedges in the town, because there's a lot of external
Yeah.
boundaries. So I would be nervous of committing that resource, because then you'd have considerations of what jobs aren't we getting to that would equally cause other areas some problems.
Yeah.
So although on a case by case basis, an opportunity, yes. Commitment to it, I would advise against.
Yeah. Well, once you do one, I suppose, as well, it's opens a can of worms.
Councillor Cosmo.
Do you know what the legal identity is of the federations, in terms of what their sort of governance structures are and things? The reason I ask that is because through my working life, I'm aware that some allotments, not in Crewe Town boundary but elsewhere in Cheshire, have applied for funds, again, externally, where they've been able to build things like their own composting toilets and greenhouses and all that kind of thing. So again, is that something that is being considered for ours? And,
Well, I can answer that very easy. Each site will be able to apply for its own external funding for those sorts of projects or projects of an ilk. That's absolutely fine under the terms of the lease and the length of the lease. So that'll still be able to, there will not be a federation unless they revitalise it and it becomes functional. But the meeting of those sites, they were very clear, I expressed that. Is there going to be a federation? Is there? No, there isn't. It didn't work out. Not anyone's fault, they tried really hard, it just wasn't coming forward.
how does it currently work? Sorry, how does it currently work? Because I was aware at one point that, for example, Wolford Road allotment site was on its own, but then I think it was like Ford Lane, the one by Bentley, and another one,
Yeah.
there was like three together. And
That's
there was
right.
another- So were they not federations in their own right? Or-
The three you're mentioning are called Crewe West End allotments, and that is a federation of 3 sites.
Yeah.
And some time ago, before my time, they chose not to be part of a larger federation and go out on their own, and that was approved, and that's all regularized. They've got, there's a lease in place for that federation and subleases to the 3 sites.
Yeah.
That was the intent for the town sites as they're termed, but that never panned out for one reason or another. And by the way, I'm not trying to be vague, I don't know why, just life, people moving around and things like that. So people tried really hard to make it happen, and it just didn't quite come around. So each site is run independently by its own site association, and they're working really hard and really positively. What they haven't been able to create is the federation to cover that. So what we're now moving towards is independent leases for each one, so they can operate as self-managed sites and carry forward as they are.
So will the Crewe West End Federation cease to exist, or will they?
No, they're separate things.
So they're separate things.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's 3 sites there, 5 sites elsewhere.
11 sites else. Oh, sorry, 8 sites else.
Eight.
There are 11 sites in total. 8 sites are unfederated.
With their respective like committees.
And they have their own independent individual site associations, committees, whatever you want to call them. The 3 on the West End are functioning very positively, very well, and they continue, and there's no discussion of change on that. We do have communication with them, it's always been positive, so that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
If you understand it, you can explain to me.
Yeah, so we're happy to continue the ongoing engagement, and I have absolute faith in yourself to engage with Councillor Rhodes.
You'll know that that's not entirely written down there by me, though.
we have a seconder for that. Yeah, thank you. All those in favour? Yeah, thank you. Item number 8 is to consider matters related to heritage, to Christchurch and the heritage strategy. I'll pass you over to Vicky. Thank you.
So as the report notes, development of the trust and transfer of the asset with no progress until a proposition is developed. Also detailed in the report, update was received from Cheshire East officers this afternoon. That Cheshire East is still working to secure the building and Nave Garden to enable it to be used for events or activities, but is unlikely to develop a technology and digital innovation centre. A meeting is provisionally booked for Wednesday to discuss the structural report that's been undertaken by Cheshire East and it was to provide some support on an application for faculty which is needed to allow the works to take place. We have been focusing on meeting the requirements of the Architectural Heritage Fund grant, which expires on the 31st of December. We have engaged with the community, but so far this hasn't resulted in identifying any new propositions for use. Officers are meeting with heritage and business leaders tomorrow and Wednesday to see if this can be developed further. So as resolved in minute O&I 21/4/8 officers will continue to explore other avenues for proposition development over the coming months, and there are no considerations for this paper, it's an update only. Second paper on heritage, so the heritage group, as the heritage offer has developed and we've begun taking things off the heritage strategy, the group feels a need to look at its membership and format. They've asked for 2 considerations to be considered tonight. The first is to introduce a role of vice chair, and they have nominated Rob Wykes for the remainder of the 22-23 civic year. They'd also like to consider that future nominations are provided for consideration of chair and vice chair at the first operations and improvement meeting of each civic year. Under making heritage visible, I'd like to draw your attention to the blue plaque scheme. I'm meeting tomorrow with the owners of the Bridle Road factory site who've now agreed that they are happy for a blue plaque to be erected to Aidan Neil Chew, as discussed at this committee previously. The Heritage Group would like to nominate Wilmot Welch as the next recipient of a blue plaque. Wilmot Welch was nominated by a member of the public for his services to scouting. He was the first Scoutmaster in Crewe, establishing a group on the 15th of March 1908, which makes it one of the earliest troops in the country. He also held the position of District Commissioner between 1920 and 1927. A prominent location for that blue plaque has been identified, but I'm still trying to contact owners around that. The nomination is for Wilmot Welch. I'd also like to draw your attention to the Crewe Works exhibition and to let you know that the brief is live and we hope that that will close on the 8th of November. Under building community, the Heritage Open Day events were impacted by the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. External partners proceeded with most of their events and were pleased with the uptake and are also all keen to be involved next year. The Crewe Town Council events were postponed but have now all taken place. The Heritage Walks were sold out and feedback particularly focused on how much participants have learned about the town. So we're now considering how some of those elements can be used in our digital engagement. The Crewe Heritage Fair took place this weekend with 15 organisations represented. It brought in a lot of new people to the Heritage Centre and it was a really important opportunity to build networks and a lot of involvement promised for future initiatives. Again, a real desire to see that going forward next year. Under the Protecting Heritage section of my report, I just again wanted to draw your attention to the request for Crewe Town Council to consider work to develop a conservation area We will now develop proposals for members and we'll bring those to a meeting in the new year. The final request for consideration is from the earmark reserves. We have been asked by a member of the community to consider digitising the Albert Hun collection. Albert Hun was a photographer who documented Crewe through the 1960s during the redevelopment of the town, and his works cover before, during and after pictures of that redevelopment. Around about 850 images, 289 are currently on Cheshire Image Bank, and the remaining 560 are only available if you visit Chester. So the digitisation would enable people to access these images for free and much more easily. It would also support the local Heritage Association to see if they have any further images that should have been lodged within the archive service. The archives have quoted £500 for that digitisation, which would leave £12,249 in heritage earmarked reserves. So the conclusions of the paper are that the projects identified within the report contribute strongly to the delivery of the business delivery plan. The development of the Heritage Group will improve the delivery of heritage activity and give more ownership to the group and the community. The requests for approval of the next plaque and digitisation of the Albert Hun collection have both come from local residents and demonstrate how heritage activity is starting to generate ownership within the community. So there are 4 considerations that I'm asking for today.
Thank you, Richard. Any comments on that, Councillor Clark?
Just for information, Aidan Neil Chu, that the statue parade is moving forward, but we actually have 2 family members who have requested that if there is a blue plaque that they will be invited. So I'll pass on their details to you so you can invite them to the blue plaque company. So it's a great, 2 great nieces that have been come forward through the Facebook stuff that we've been promoting statue parade. They actually contacted the group through that. So, and Wilmot Welsh, I recall that a few years ago with Councillor Dorothy Flew, we did an exhibition in the Crewe Library. There's a photograph there, and his family came along and did the promotion of that as well. So somewhere in the archives and the Crewe Library, I'm sure that we've still got this. There was a cabinet full of memorabilia and a photograph and that, which and a dedication which was open to them.
Yeah, the nominations come from the person who generated that exhibition, so all that was good.
Is anyone happy to propose the 4 items on the agenda? Councillor Clark. No, I give that one to Councillor Strain Francis. All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 9 is to consider matters related to CCTV in Crewe.
So, following on from the conversations earlier, the town council currently contributes to the cost of CCTV in Crewe, and in addition to the fixed cameras, which contributions made every year of over £32,000. Last year, or late last year, the town council purchased 2 portable cameras to support the Clean Crewe project. The installation of that has been, shall we say, slow, but I'm promised that tomorrow Highways will install sockets for cameras to be mounted on 3 lampposts that Councillor Messington and I visited and checked out earlier this year, and they were nominated to support oversight of some of the fly tipping hotspots. There are 2 cameras and the 3 posts there available to be used, so one of the cameras at some point will be moved to the 3rd point. I had a meeting with CCTV last week, and those cameras should be live if the letters are delivered this week, which is a promise. They should be live by the 8th.
Yeah.
This year, I put it in writing. So that's the update on the town council owned cameras, but as a result of those discussions and discussions around town centre safety and security, you might recall there have been a number of issues around the town centre and some areas that aren't covered by CCTV. I shared the costs of and the use of those cameras with the police, who subsequently made an application to the Community Safety Fund, Cheshire's Community Safety Fund, to purchase 5 cameras for use in the Crewe area, the wider Crewe area, so town centre, a number of hotspots, and potentially use outside of the parish of Crewe. But it was felt that 3 cameras were likely to be used all of the time in Crewe. To make the use of them effective, they have identified with the CCTV manager 5 home placements, if you like, for those cameras, and they're all in Crewe parish. So those cameras can be situated there until such time as they might be required to be temporarily stationed in another site. But as I say, we anticipate at least 3 of them to be sited in the town. The home spaces for those are nominated at the moment as Queen's Park, and there's been some real progress by use of CCTV images recently in dealing with antisocial behaviour in that park. Frank Webb Avenue, so that's in the play area that Town Council's nominated for the next improvement. Edleston Road, a site there which would look out on the Imperial. Mill Street, close to the retail park, and West Street, again close to the retail park. So and there's another site under consideration on Bresty Road. The cameras were funded through £12,000 from SCEP. That includes the first year of data that's required because these operates by transmitting data to the CCTV control units. But beyond that, there is no current funding for ongoing supply of data. Sergeant Tandy has informed me today that he intends to make another application to SCEP for that funding. But as an interim, I have agreement with Richard Christopherson from Cheshire East Council that they would fund 50% of the cost of those cameras. And the request is to members to consider using any unused CCTV budget from this year to earmark reserve to ensure that beyond the use of the cameras and beyond the scope of the data already purchased, the Town Council would support up to 50% of the cost of the data for those cameras. So we would be talking in effect into the second half of 23-24 for their onward operation. Beyond that point, then obviously there would be further discussion about who maintains and supplies that data. So the consideration I'm asking for today is that an unused proportion of CCT funding is earmarked for use for future use next year.
I propose that happens.
Thank you, Councillor Stroud-Francis. Councillor Walton, all those in favour of the proposal? Thank you. Item number 10 is to receive an update and consider matters related to regeneration delivery plan for 2022-23.
So rather than give you lots and lots of reports, I've tried to put as much as I can under one banner for you this evening, and it's very much an update. So in terms of the Business Improvement District, which is the first area of investment I'd like to talk about, the contract development was awarded to Groundwork in August, and they are now working to refresh and update all the data that they have and that they obtained through the initial work, the feasibility work that was done for the businesses to create that database. I know that they are making those connections because I've already received a number of contacts from businesses that I've spoken to in the past to let me know that they've been contacted. And they will then develop a steering group to look at preparation of that bid. They've also made their initial contact with Cheshire East Council to inform them that they are the consultants developing this work, which will give Cheshire East Council the opportunity to form their own steering group to manage the sort of legal processes and producing the benchmark data that will be required for that ballot to take place. So there's little else to report on that at this stage. In addition to that, there are some areas of data which would be very helpful for the bid, but also for our own understanding of the impact of events in the town centre. Now, Cheshire East Council already purchased some footfall data, which is based on location of phones. It's not personal data, but it's data about where people are moving around and coming into town in the areas that people may be gathering. It is possible to buy some more detailed information for events, and so I've spoken to the company that supplies Cheshire East Council, and for £250 a report roughly they will be able to provide reports on future events. So I must need to consider today these investments of some of our new generation funding to provide that data. And there may be other areas as the year progresses where we need to fill some gaps to provide that sort of information. The reason I include that with bid development is that it is possible that as events are seen as important to local businesses to generate footfall, that they, as part of their business plan, would want to fund and support town centre events. So this would help with their business case. The second area I want to talk to you about is public realm. So following the last meeting when I outlined some areas of expenditure, members may remember that they delegated responsibility for managing that budget to Clark and myself, but I think it best to keep you informed and still seek your approval where possible. I've looked at the town centre repaint, which has progressed well, subject to weather conditions and staff, etc. And the first two stages are almost complete, and you may notice that most of the planters, benches, bollards, etc. have been painted around the town. There is another scheme of work now which I would like to put forward, which is to paint railings, the town gates on Queensway and from Market Street onto Lyceum Square, and a few remaining planters. There's a broken lamp post which I'm trying to get removed by Highways, but if it's not, it's a stubbed cut down lamp post in the seating area. If not, then I would like to see that filled and painted as well, as long as it's safe to proceed, and to treat some of the remaining benches. The cost of that from Orbitas, and railings along Delamere Street in particular. So the cost of that would be £6,696, which I propose to take from the public realm expenditure this year. I've also added in there some grip bins, which are a more traditional style, a more attractive style than the various yellow and green plastic bins that are around the town centre, and getting them tied up in appearance, and also reduce that sort of water ingress and dissolving of salt that you see on the bins. So that would cost up to £1,200 to provide those grip bins in the main area. And then I wanted to mention the town centre lighting scheme. We have an opportunity to improve the appearance on Victoria Street. This was one of the areas recommended by members a couple of years ago to light the trees on Victoria Street. We did leave the Christmas lights in those trees last year purely because a lot of town centre lights were out, and it was to give a little bit of light for the businesses, but they were only ever temporary lights, and then best. The events manager is looking at the current Christmas scheme and replacement of those lights in the trees for Christmas. But I would like to seek your permission to go ahead and look at a more permanent scheme once that is completed. I've had some estimates which don't include labour, and at this moment in time I would suggest up to £15,000 might be required to work. Or which could be taken from the public realm budget to supplement the £6,000 that's allocated this year to the town centre lighting scheme. Then in terms of floral displays, if you've been into town in the last week or two, you may have noticed that a winter display is now out for the first time on the pole planters, and hopefully people are enjoying the colour that that's giving, which is a bit better than looking at bare poles. And also the new troughs have been planted up and put outside the front of the market hall. So this is a trial for us. We've never done a winter scheme in these before, and hopefully members are enjoying seeing that. There will be a small budget left after that, which we can allocate to some additional enhancements in the town. In terms of playground improvements, members allocated £100,000 to Frank Webb Avenue. That allocation was approved in August. Subsequently, we've obviously had summer holidays, staff holidays, etc., sickness. And we're now at the point where we'd like to do the consultation, which was not possible to do straight after that approval was made. So I'm just making you aware that that work will be undertaken, consultation with residents and schools, etc. in the area. But the delivery of that new play area is likely to be next summer. On that basis and from that experience, I would suggest that we agree on or finalise the agreement on the play area subsequently to be done before the end of this financial year, so that we can start that work on consultation earlier, get to the schools perhaps before they're closed, and therefore you'll get some much earlier delivery of next year's scheme. So I think that's all of the areas I wanted to talk to you about. So I'm seeking consideration then of the expenditure of public realm budget of £6,696 on street furniture and on grit bins up to £1,200. Also the purchase of a grit spreader, so a hand push along grit spreader to get to areas quickly and efficiently, particularly for events and other times of the year. Then to approve some developments and seeking quotes for Victoria Street area lighting, should you be happy to light Victoria Street, and to note the expenditure on floral schemes, and to approve the early decision on the next play area, and then finally to oh sorry, I have missed one area. I'd like to ask for permission to spend up to £5,000 on animation for the town centre in the build up to Christmas. This will be following on from the switch on, which happens on the 26th of November. At the moment, we still have then a gap on animation activities. Members approved. I'd like to go ahead and spend some money on bringing some entertainment or activities in.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any comments on all those items? No, I'm happy to approve those then. Second.
No, it's fine.
No?
No question, no.
Okay, Councillor Watton seconded. All those in favour of those? Thank you. Item number 11 is to consider the budget for 2023-24.
Thank you. So at the last O&I meeting, we discussed budget for next year and a total of £49,407. £94,711 was proposed as a draft budget. Following discussions and council in their response to the current economic situation, council's aspirations are obviously reduced in terms of increase for preset next year. Therefore, I'm proposing that we look at a budget of £473,211, which is still an increase, but a much smaller increase on the original proposal. In terms of where that budget is allocated, just a very quick summary, there'll be a slight increase on town centre maintenance, which would support any purchase or repair of equipment for the Rangers. There would be an increase in costs on the Ranger service, which absorbs those anticipated staffing cost increases, etc. Similarly, an increase on the enforcement officer costs, which is around salary, uniforms, etc. The floral schemes contribution would remain the same. Play areas would remain the same. There would be a new budget line for allotments to support that development, which the clerk has already reported on this evening. Then there would be, I propose a slight reduction in public realm budget from £31,500 to £25,000. Work is taking place on the town centre, and we will have made some progress this year in improving the town centre's appearance. I don't anticipate that there will be many more opportunities, certainly within the town centre, to spend £31,000, but there are other areas which might benefit. So my suggestion would be that we add £5,000 to regeneration projects, which gives us scope to do more of that development work should we need any additional support for heritage, or in terms of development of the bid or any other activities that come out of that work of developing the bid. There is also a budget line of £20,000, again lower than our original aspirations, but that line would represent good increase in a use of funds to deliver those heritage strategy aspirations. So I would ask members, would you approve or support that proposed budget? Do you require any amendments to that proposal? If you are happy with that, would you please recommend the agreed budget to council?
Thank you. Any comments or questions regarding the budget, the revised budget?
I don't want to ask a question. I heard something on the radio the other day about the amount of council tax that isn't being paid all over the country, and I can't remember, it was beyond me. I think it was billions, but it was mentioned that Crewe East
Cheshire
was
East. Cheshire East was high.
sorry, Cheshire East. I knew what I meant. Cheshire East was in one of the areas was in the top 10, and if I remember rightly, Crewe was actually mentioned. Unpaid council tax by people in Crewe town is in the top 10 in the country, not around here, in the country, which I don't know. I really haven't got a clue whether what we should do, but if we don't do something, then we're going to stagnate. But at the same time, if we can't find ways of, shall we say, reducing it, I'm getting to the stage now where I don't even know what I'm saying, but I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from.
It's an increase of just over £8,500. From
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim.
from this year's budget, but a reduction from what was previously put forward.
Yeah, I'm just worried that there's going to be a lot of people in Crewe who won't be able to afford it, and there'll be even more people not paying council tax. Is there no way we can actually reduce it? I don't know. Not very often I don't know what to say, and this is one. Put it in your diary.
Okay.
Council sought to limit any increase to precepts at 3.5% for the coming financial year. 3.5% is way below any predictions, even most optimistic ones associated with inflation. And its intent there is to demonstrate recognition of the impact of soaring inflation and the cost of living in the community, and that's always felt more by those more in need, which Crewe represents a large number of those people. This amended draft budget that Lindsay's come with then fits in with council's aims and gets and maintains a bottom line of the overall council budget of just under 3.5%. So it demonstrates a level of sustainability, a level of recognition of the pressures, and it doesn't provide for excessive inflationary increases in any way, shape or form. Bearing in mind then again, Councillor Strange-Francis, you've mentioned this to me many times, the level of preset is proportionately very low, and on Bandy property, which majority of ours aren't, and they're lower, that 3.5% increase represents approximately £1.26 in a year, overall in a year. So it's as low as it's proportionally able to be. Any other decreases you are as members entitled and entirely empowered to recommend. But I would suggest to you that demonstrates clear recognition of the situations people are facing, whilst minimising as much impact as possible, enhancing and maintaining services. It seems like a fair balance.
Thank you. As this falls in under the council's aims and falls under the 3.5%, I'm happy to propose that amended budget. Thank you, Councillor Clark. All those in favour? Against? Abstain? Councillor Strange-Francis, thank you. Item number 12, which is the final item, is to note the proposed date of the next meeting, which is currently Tuesday, the 31st of January 2023 at 6 p.m. And on that note, I will now close the meeting.